Karl Friedrich, Charley, Konig was born in January 1924 in Annaburg, a quiet town near the Czechoslovakian border. His childhood was shaped by the shadow of war. His father, a veteran of the First World War, had returned from Russia in 1915 battered and broken, blind in one eye, nearly deaf, and missing all of his teeth. Despite his injuries, he carried himself with pride, a man defined by endurance and the struggles of a generation that had fought and survived. His mother came from Hamburg, the daughter of a family of merchants, and she devoted herself to raising him. Politics meant little to Charley in the early years, though he could not ignore the rival marches that filled the streets, Nazi stormtroopers on one side, communists on the other, each moving with flags and music. Schoolyard fights often mirrored these divisions, with boys taking sides according to their father's allegiances. At 10, Charley joined the Hitler Youth. It began less as politics than as adventure. Hikes through the forests, sports, and gardening filled his days. The camaraderie of the boys, the sense of discipline, and the stories of German history they were taught gave him purpose without feeling like indoctrination. After his father's death, Charley and his mother moved to Hamburg to live with his grandmother. There, the Hitler Youth program became more structured. Training sessions and lessons about figures like Frederick the Great gave him a sense of pride in history. He never felt manipulated, only engaged. When the war began, Charley was still too young to serve. He watched from the home front as air raids shattered the night, climbing to the attic to watch searchlights sweep the sky and German planes chase Allied bombers. His mother begged him to stay safe in the basement, but he was captivated by the spectacle. After raids, he would collect shrapnel and dig out spent incendiary bombs. He hated the destruction and believed it was wrong on both sides, yet fear rarely touched him. Only once did he feel real fear, when barrage balloons loomed near his home. But mostly, he worried that the war might end before he could take part. At 17, he tried repeatedly to enlist but was turned away for being underage. Once he finished school, he and his friends resolved to volunteer for the elite units, paratroopers, submariners, pilots, or tank crews. By May 1942, his turn came. Because he was volunteering, Charley was allowed to choose his path. He had considered cavalry but was discouraged. Too few positions, mostly bicycles and scout cars. Tanks promised power and opportunity, so he chose them. His mother was upset but understood he had made his choice. Charley began in a replacement battalion, receiving infantry training before moving on to tank school. Some recruits became radio operators, which meant easier work but no chance of promotion. Charley wanted to be an officer, so he pushed himself through rigorous training, learned to drive tanks, and earned the rank of Lance Corporal, commanding small groups of new recruits. In March 1943, he and 4 others were sent to Africa. After passing his medical exam as fit for tropical service, he joined Panzer Regiment 5, Germany's oldest tank regiment. Training progressed from Panzer I to Panzer II and finally to the medium Panzer III. Charley excelled at the firing range, mastering every detail of the tanks he trained on. He and his unit traveled through Italy to Sicily, camping near Palermo, and finally boarded transport planes over the Mediterranean, flying low over the water toward the African front. Charley's early experiences in Africa were harrowing. The airfields were bombed, and the retreating German forces were outnumbered 10-1. In the 2nd Battalion, 8th Company of the 21st Panzer Division, he learned quickly that their mission was not to win but to delay. Tanks had already been lost, and every engagement was a struggle against impossible odds. Hurricanes strafed the battlefield, artillery tore through the landscape, and yet the men fought with unwavering resolve. Charley's Panzer IV crew became his new family. He served as loader, and though he longed to become gunner, he stayed with the men he trusted. His small size made him agile in the cramped tank, and he sometimes slept on ammunition lockers. He admired his lieutenant, a veteran of Russia and France, and together they weathered battles, mechanical failures, and near-death encounters. On May 6, 1943, near Mareth, their tank was hit in the transmission. Flames engulfed the interior, and the crew scrambled out under machine gun fire. Even as shrapnel struck him, Charley survived, crawling under enemy fire thanks to training and sheer luck. The lieutenant asked about their pistols, considered attacking a machine gun nest, then abandoned the idea when there were too few weapons. Charley hid in an olive grove while bombs fell nearby. By morning, he was captured by the Americans and transported to a large POW camp near Marath. Hunger was constant. White American bread was airy and tasteless compared to the hearty German bread he had known. Transfers followed. British-run camps, Louisiana fields cutting sugar cane, tent encampments enduring winter. He learned to survive on meager rations and make the most of scant resources. Charley's skill with languages made him an interpreter, a role that gave him some privileges and a small sense of purpose. He learned English and American slang, polished his French, and even picked up Spanish. In England, he worked in a cement factory along the Thames and sometimes slipped past the wire to visit nearby towns. Finally, in 1947, after 4 long years, he was graded for repatriation. He returned to Germany via Cuxhaven and Münster, released on April 17, 1947. At Camp Alva, Charley threw himself into study. Surrounded by educated men, lawyers, judges, economists, he absorbed knowledge he had never imagined tackling as a young tank loader. He learned Spanish, polished his French, and studied law and economics. His skill with languages made him invaluable, and he served as interpreter for the enlisted men. But captivity was never free of tension. After a mutiny at Camp Tonkawa in late 1943, Charley was punished by being transferred to the officers' compound. Not long after, he was sent to a side camp at Okmulgee, where he and others were put to work harvesting cotton. Life there was rough but oddly varied. During one work detail on a ranch, Charley even caught and handled horses, a far cry from the steel confines of his Panzer. The Americans moved him often. From Okmulgee, he was sent briefly to Camp Polk in Louisiana, then to Camp Ginret, where he endured winter in tents and labored in the cane fields, cutting sugar cane under a damp southern sky. Afterward, it was back to Camp Polk, then on to Camp Shanks in New York, the last stop on American soil before being shipped back across the Atlantic. In Antwerp, he worked as an interpreter for a British lieutenant, bridging the gap between captors and prisoners with the same calm skill he had shown in America. Later, he was moved again to England, where he labored in a cement factory along the Thames. When the workday ended, he sometimes slipped through the wire and wandered out into the neighboring town, scaling the seawall to taste a hint of freedom. Finally, the long ordeal came to an end. Prisoners were graded and prioritized for repatriation. Charley passed through Cuxhaven, then Münster, where on April 17, 1947, after 4 long years, his captivity officially ended. He remembered little of the arrival except the delousing and the amusement at the fear of the American guards. Through it all, Charley never bore hatred toward the Americans. There had been hardship and hunger, but also decency, friendship, and moments of human kindness. He left captivity with his dignity intact, a wealth of experience, and even a quiet hope that one day he might return to America. Looking back, Charley often reflected on the strange contrasts of his experience: the terror of battle, the camaraderie of men under fire, the bitter hunger in POW camps, and the surprising kindness of strangers and captors alike. He had been tested in ways that no classroom or training could prepare him for, yet he had survived, not only through skill and courage but through luck and the bonds he formed with his comrades. It was a life shaped by extremes, the ordinary and the extraordinary, fear and hope, cruelty and generosity, and it left him with a perspective few could ever understand. Even amid devastation, Charley had glimpsed humanity, and it was this memory that he carried with him as he stepped once more onto German soil, free at last but forever marked by the war he had lived through. Thanks for watching. If you have any German POW stories to share, drop your thoughts in a comment below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe.